So in the last lecture, I briefly showed you how to change the style of an element by directly setting the style attribute of that element using set attribute. But there's one major drawback to that. So let me demo this. First of all, inside index.html, we just have an h1. It has a style attribute, and that style is just color is orange. So it looks something like this in the browser. Now imagine we want to add a new style to this style attribute. Well, if we come down here, we've got a title reference already. We've stored that in here. That is query selector, and we're getting the h1, which is that. So we can just say title and then use set attribute. We're going to set the style attribute. And what we want to do is add a margin. So I'm just going to say margin is going to be 50 pixels. So what's going to happen when I do this? Well, if I save it and come over here, we can see we get that margin, but it's totally overwritten the orange thing right here because we colored it orange in the HTML. So when we use this method set attribute, especially when we come to styles and we want to add additional styles, it's just going to completely overwrite what's currently there. So I don't want this behavior. I want to be able to add extra styles instead of just completely overwriting them. So how can I do this? Well, we can do that in JavaScript using the style property. So first of all, I'm going to log this to the console so we can take a look at it. I'm going to say console.log, and then we want the title, which is this thing up here. Then we say .style. This is a property of this element. So then, if I save this now and preview over here in the console, we can see this big object, and it has all of these different properties. These are all CSS properties, and we can see most of them are empty. But if we scroll down to color, we can see the color is orange because that's what we set it to be in the HTML. So we can use this style property to add styles on the fly or remove them as well. So imagine I want to get the color style property, and I just want to see that. I could say console.log, we want the title.style, and then in the style object over here, when we logged it to the console, we just grab whatever the property name is. That's the CSS property name, right? Color. So we can say .color, and that should give us orange. So we see that right there. Awesome. Now, what if I want to add styles then? Well, I can come down here and say title.styles, or style rather, then the property name that I want to add a value to. Now, it can be any one of these different properties listed right here. This is every single CSS style or CSS property name. So I can say something like margin, and I can set that equal to something. It's in a string, 50 pixels. Now, if I save that and refresh, we see we get the margin. If I inspect, we can see this now has a margin, but it also still has the color. We've not overwritten that. We've just added a new property. So for that reason, this way is better than this way. Okay, so let's do another example. Let's say I want to change the color style. So we already have orange right here. If I want to change that, I can say title.style.color is equal to crimson. Save that. And let's view this in a browser, and we can see that updates the color now. And we can see over here, the color is crimson. And it still has the margin. So again, it's not overwritten anything. Well, it has, it's overwritten the original color, but not the margin. All right then. So what if I want to do something like the font size? Well, in CSS, the property is font-size, and then we give it something. But we can't do that in JavaScript because it looks at this and says, okay, well, you're taking the font and you're trying to subtract this thing right here, the size. So in JavaScript, when we have a double barrel property name like this, we take away that and we use camel case like so. So what we can say is title.style.font size and set that equal to something. I'm just going to set it equal to 60 pixels, save it and check it out in a browser. And now we can see it has a font size of 60 pixels as well. Now, if you're unsure of what the name will be, remember, always refer back to the style property and just look inside that. So if we open this up, we can see all of the different names right here. Okay. So for example, border left color, you can see it's camel case. Okay. So if we want to delete a style, we can just grab it by saying title.style, then the property name, for example, margin, and then I'm going to set that equal to an empty string. So it was 50 pixels before when we set it here. Now I'm setting it to an empty string, so it basically removes that property. So if I check this out, we can see the margin has now gone, and inside the style attribute we no longer see margin. So most of the time that we're adding or removing just a single style, I'll use this way of doing it rather than the set attribute method. But a lot of the time, instead of just adding inline styles this way, it can be easier to predefine all of your CSS classes in a style sheet somewhere, and then use JavaScript to add, remove, or change classes on your HTML elements. And we'll see how to do that in the very next lecture.